Hey guys, welcome back. If you're familiar with my channel, you already know that I love to make Christmas cone trees. And today I'm really excited to share with you the easiest cone trees I have ever made. These are quick, easy, and inexpensive. Let's get started. This cone is 16 inches high and it's made from poster board. This one was made out of white poster board. I painted it red, but in the end I really didn't need to because I did a second one with a white cone and you couldn't see any of the cone coming through. Either way, you'll need to give it a coat of spray adhesive. I'll be doing this elsewhere so not to mess up my craft room. You can see here that the cone has a sticky coating of spray adhesive all over it, and I've let it dry to a bit of a tacky finish. You don't want it to be really wet. I picked this yarn up at Michael's mainly because I was just absolutely in love with the color of it. I also have a link in my description box. You can pick it up on Amazon as well. It's really, really heavy and super thick. Here you can see just how thick it is. As you can see, I have a tiny space in the top of my cone where I'm going to insert the wool. If you don't have a tiny opening at the top of your cone, just make one using scissors. And secure the wool in place using hot glue. And then we just start to spin the wool around and the spray adhesive will hold it in place. Just make sure that you keep it nice and even. And I told you this was going to be easy. Once you get all the way to the bottom, do the final row using hot glue to hold it in place so that it doesn't unravel. Once the cone's entirely covered, take the final end, just tuck it into the inside, and secure it down using hot glue. I love the clean, sleek simplicity of this tree, but who's to say we can't level it up? This is actually beaded garland that I bought at Dollarama. I'm sure you can find something similar at Dollar Tree or Walmart. I'm not going to use glue or anything. I'm just going to lay these on the tree, and that way if you want to change up your decor later, you can change it up. So all I'm going to do is I'm just going to wrap them around, and with the end pieces, I'm just going to tuck them in between the yarn and then just wind it around. This tree is a little bit similar to one of the very first cone trees I ever did, and I will link that video up for you as well. This yarn is very much like a very, very thinly cut piece of fun fur. I didn't cut a hole in the top of the cone, I just applied a line of hot glue down the seam and then attached it to the top and then wound around it to hold it in place. And the same as the last one, I've just wound the wool around the cone. With this wool, you want to ensure that you keep that flat backing side firmly up against the cone and don't let it roll. And since I'm sure you don't want to watch me wind the whole cone, here it is, all done. As with some of our previous cones, that final bottom row is glued in place with hot glue and the end is tucked underneath. To level up this white tree, I'm going to start with these green and red bows that I picked up at Dollar Tree. They come with kind of a twist tie on the back of them, and since I don't want this to show on my tree, I'm just going to take some scissors and snip it off. I'm going to be attaching these bows onto my tree using double-sided tape that I picked up at the Dollar Tree. I'm just attaching a small piece of the double-sided tape to the back of my bow and then peeling off the backing. And then you simply stick them onto your tree wherever you want them. I picked this pom-pom garland up at Dollarama. I used 4 rolls of garland for this project, 2 red and 2 white. For this Christmas cone tree, we are going to wind the pom-pom garland simultaneously. So I have started by attaching the red and the white to the back of the cone at the seam as always, and then we're going to wind it around. When I got to the end of the first set of garlands, I just attached those down using hot glue, and then I attached the next set in the same order, so the white to white and the red to red, and continued on my way. And then when I got all the way to the top, I just snipped off the excess and finished it by attaching the last pom-poms down using hot glue. This is Red Heart ribbon yarn, and I picked this up at Dollarama. It's definitely outside my usual style, but I thought it would be kind of interesting to see how it worked. I attached the end at the seam to start this bottom row, and with this bottom row I kind of pulled the edge a little bit under so that it sort of tucks under and gives it a nice finished edge on the bottom. And a bit of learn as you go on this one. So I started out using, I actually used white glue, and I just ran it around the bottom with a paintbrush for that first bottom row. But then after I did that, I found that it actually worked better just to use hot glue. The other difference on these Christmas cone trees is that instead of winding in a continuous piece, I actually cut these and layered each row on top of the other because I wanted this one to be nice and straight. And as with any of these projects where you have like a start or stopping point, you want to make sure you line all those up on the back seam so that your only messy section is hopefully going to be up against the wall. This project starts with a 14-inch cone painted in Rustoleum gold metallics. Here is my fringe, and as you can see, it is 2 inches in length. So I will be doing my first line at 2 inches from the bottom of the cone. Here is a D9 pro tip for you guys. I've showed you this in some of my past videos. So in order to get really nice straight lines on your cone tree, you're going to find something that's the right height to rest your hand on to get to the place where you want to be, and then you're going to just turn your cone slowly around, keeping the bottom nice and flat on the table, and you're going to get a perfect line. Note that I used a gold Sharpie to draw my lines so that I won't have black peeking through my design. Starting at the bottom row, we're going to attach one end of the fringe using a good amount of hot glue on the one end to keep that in place. And I actually tried 2 different methods of attaching the fringe. I did it attaching the glue, the hot glue, to the back of the fringe trim. And I also did it just putting the hot glue directly onto the cone. And for my preference, I prefer just putting it right onto the cone, and I did it in a little bit of a sort of a wavy line like that. And then you just want to pull that tight while the glue sets up a little bit. And then you're just going to continue your way around until you come back to the back side of the cone and cut it and glue it in place. And there's our first row complete. For the second row, I held the trim in place and made sure it had enough of an overlap to cover the sort of solid piece at the top of the last section. And then I marked it. And here is my second line. And then I'm just repeating the process for the next row. This one has kind of a neat 3D effect when it's all done. Here are a couple of pro tips for you. You can use an inverted plant pot as a base for your cone tree, or you can flip it upright and use it as a base. When cutting out the bottom of your cone tree, this one I'm just doing on foam core, use something that's rigid and has a perfect circle shape to it. If you just draw around the bottom of your cone, it may not be perfectly circular, which may end up making your cone look slightly out of whack. And now we have a perfectly circular bottom for our tree. This cone has been given a coat of key lime green paint. I'm using this dollar store wool that has a real moss look to it. Once the spray paint was dry, I gave it a coat of spray adhesive and let that dry to a tacky finish. To start the tree, you're just going to attach a piece of yarn vertically using hot glue, and then you're going to wrap around the top of the tree to hold that yarn in place. And every now and then just give it a little bit of a push up to make sure that you're filling in all those spaces. And as always, when we get to the end, we're going to attach that final row using hot glue and then tuck the loose end under the bottom of the tree. I decided to add a bit of trim. This is some gold leaf style trim that I picked up some time ago at Dollarama. So I actually only glued the very start and finish ends on this. I like the idea that I could remove it and replace it with something else if I wanted to. So I just did a dollop of glue on the one starting end, attached that into place, and then wound. And I also glued the top end in place and trimmed it off. It looks like a mini little Christmas tree, but I felt like it needed a base, so I took this terracotta pot and gave it a coat of gold paint, and voila! Thank you so much for watching. I hope you really enjoyed all these cone trees. If you like these, I have another video here that I think you're gonna love. Click on the link and I'll meet you over there.